Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Matt, Steve, and Jeff. G'day, guys.
G'day.
G'day.
Today we're talking about season sickness, when the season changes and how you get sick with it. It's funny because I was only talking to Tony about it the other day. She's saying that she's feeling a bit fatigued and a bit tired more than normal. I said, this seems to happen every year or a couple of times a year. It's weird, but a change of season can bring on all sorts of things, and it's timely because we're going to be talking about colds and flu and, you know, why you go to the doctors and why they prescribe certain medications and the impact of those. And obviously, Matt, look what nature has to say in terms of other things that you can do. What else do you want to talk about today?
I want to talk about the latest results from the flu vaccine that came out and published in the New England Journal of Medicine. That was interesting.
Was this for Australia or was it for US or global?
Australia.
Yep.
Australia rates came out, and particularly in the bad viruses, we can talk about that. We can talk about Tamiflu. We can talk about
Tamiflu. That's a great one. I mean, this came back with SARS and all
drug
that.
treatments and the natural medicine as well.
Was it N1H1? I forget what it was. Was it the pig? Was it avian bird flu or SARS, or was it?
No, look, Tamiflu is a scam. No, what happened?
I know,
they come out with
scam.
SARS. So when SARS virus, remember the SARS virus?
I remember
that was
that.
being evil and was going to kill the world and affect mainly the Chinese originally got it. When the Chinese don't know what to do, they typically use licorice root because it's good soothing, anti-inflammatory, especially for the respiratory tract, but just happens to inhibit viral replication. So because the SARS affected that part of the world where they had a little treatment locally that helped, it eradicated the virus before it killed the world like they suspected, and then they had a shitload of Tamiflu left over. Is that pretty much the story?
Pretty much.
And then they said, well, let's quickly worry about the avian flu that's going to infect humans and destroy the world, and then the sheeps and then the pigs and all those things to sell off the Tamiflu they made for SARS. And then the Tamiflu expired.
business.
Then the Tamiflu expired. And so
in
then the
Australia,
Australian government took all of it
20 million.
and then went and got a whole heap more made, because every time someone said there's a potentially a virus that might come, they think, well, Tamiflu, we've convinced Tamiflu is the answer.
Well, I mean, it's somebody. What that old saying is, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. No, the Australian government doubled down on that one.
Yeah.
I think we had one flu vaccine for every single man, woman, and child in Australia, 20 million, and I think they all expired because I think less than 5% of the population actually went out and got this Tamiflu from this dreaded, killer virus that was going to come and kill everyone. I still love it, though. From a business point of view, fear and greed. Man, fear is a great motivator. And if you can trick the government into buying all your soon-to-be expired Tamiflu, which is shown to be completely ineffective against SARS anyway.
Well, that just doesn't exist anymore.
Good business model.
But if you have a look at the whole concept, like now coming into winter into Australia, so on the morning shows now, it's like, man, flu season's coming.
Yep.
It's going to be the worst one ever. And they start the scare campaign. So they start the fear and the greed campaign straight away.
I love how they name the flus: the avian flu, the bird flu, the swine flu. And the reason being is because when these flus infect animals, that changes the genome slightly on the virus RNA, and that's where the name comes from. But the name sounds scary, doesn't it? This is the avian flu, the bird. That's all. It's just a minor change in genetic shift. That's all those names mean.
So explain to me the H1N1 then, because that was a combination between the pig and the bird and the orangutan and the Himalayas. I don't know, but that was an unusual flu that they said was going to wipe out, basically everyone.
Well, the swine flu was a H1N1 flu. That's a different type of thing. The bad one is a H3N2, by the way.
And what's that? Okay.
That's like the influenza A one. That's the one that kills people.
Right.
The H1N1s are usually less harmful. So the swine flu is actually less harmful. It still kills the elderly, and very rarely, it's not considered a bad flu. So it's one that a lot of people get, and it is put into the vaccines. The only problem with the vaccines is the way they make the vaccine, is that they look at the Northern Hemisphere and go, oh yeah, the flu's over there. They inject that flu into a fertilised egg, like one you eat, like an egg.
With a black dot
chicken
in
egg.
Like a chicken egg, okay.
Yeah, and that replicates it, and you take the vaccine out of that, and
they attenuate it, and then they kill it, don't they? And then they put it with an adjuvant so that it can actually, the body goes, oh, that's bad. They then have a look at the genetic material and go, okay, let's build up antibodies to that flu. I understand the principle of it.
Now, the New England Journal of Medicine released results from last year's one.
And that's last year's flu in Australia?
Yep. And
last
this
year's
is
flu vaccine.
the flu vaccine.
How
So
effective it was. And was this the Cochrane review?
not yet, but we'll get to the Cochrane review one. These guys estimated that based on all the evidence that it was about 10% effective.
Right.
So 1 in 10 people.
It's about as
got
good as
benefit.
placebo.
Oh, probably slightly
placebo's
worse.
10 to 15%.
Yeah, it's
typically.
slightly worse than
effective.
a placebo.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what New England benefit. But after saying how bad it was and all the problems, their weird conclusion.
It's weird.
You're just going to love this.
Well,
This
if
is-
it's
So, hang
anything
on.
like the
So
other one,
just
let's
in-
double down.
In perspective, just before he goes on
Yeah.
with the big drum roll punchline,
yeah.
understand that what happens. So in the natural medicine world, we get criticised all the time for not having studied things. Okay, things aren't studied effectively prior to us using them. Apparently,
Sure.
They don't have the double-blind clinical trials. We don't have decades worth of studies on these things before making these claims and that sort of stuff. And that's the constant criticism. Now, to make a vaccine, they have a 12-month period from when the virus from last season before the next season. So they actually have a 6-month window to design a vaccine, trial the vaccine, test the vaccine before they insist everyone has, they would love to have compulsory flu vaccines. In a lot of jobs
Zinc
and occupations they do, like in the elderly home and the daycare centres, they insist that these staff have these things. So they have government initiatives saying everyone rush out, all over the TV. You're all going to die unless you rush out and get this flu vaccine. 6 months trials to use it, and then what happens after they give it to everyone, then they go back retrospectively, collect the data to see how effective it was.
They don't actually trial
After
it.
they don't trial it. There's no trials
no
to
trials.
see if it works.
They
Before
just go,
they insist you have it.
yeah, this is what happened in the Northern Hemisphere. We're sticking in this year's one for the Southern Hemisphere, 6 months later, obviously. And they inject it, and they sow afterwards. And in this case, last year's was 10% effective for the H3N2 virus, which is the influenza A one, the bad one. So anyway, but they went through why it was so bad and all the process and all that sort of thing. And at the very end of the study, they said, and this is what blew me away. They said, how bad it was and didn't work, and don't know, we've got to work
And
on it
side
better.
effects and all
Yeah,
that sort
all
of
the
stuff.
side
And
effects.
Risk versus benefit ratio. Always keep in mind risk versus benefit ratio.
Yeah.
What are the risks of side effects and what is the actual benefit from this thing? So they've shown 10% benefit.
Yep.
Perhaps.
And there's side effects too. I'll get to the side effects. They said, however imperfect though, current influenza vaccines remain a valuable public health tool, and it's always better to get vaccinated than not vaccinated.
According to what information?
Well, not according to the information in the
published.
previous paragraph that they just published.
Right.
Because according to that information, it says, however, no one should get this, and we should redesign this thing if it's only 10% effective.
Well, let's take the premise that vaccines are effective, the flu
Yeah.
vaccines are effective and safe, and that the risk-reward ratio is a benefit. But clearly in this season, based on the information that it provided, it was not.
No.
So it's pretty hard to swallow last year's flu vaccine results and then turn around and say,
This year's going to be better.
well, what was then the advice? Because I think if I remember vaguely, they've doubled down. They've said,
Yeah.
you know what, this was a cheaper vaccine. Let's actually go and spend more money on more vaccines.
That's what they said on the morning show. So
Yeah.
on the TV morning shows, they were saying the reason why this one was ineffective because they went cheap. And
Well-
at this time, they're going to go expensive. They're going to invest a lot. They're going to give a lot more money to these guys that tricked them last year. Because, you know what's really cool about that?
I love it.
Man, we can triple the price. We can triple the price of our products that we sell. They're going to work better. The reason, if anyone out there has used any of our products that we make, they didn't get the results that you expected, go back to that shop, pay them double. Give that store owner double the money, and it'll work better.
I've never known an industry where there's been a big failure and the response is, well, give more money because they're failing.
And the
I
funny
mean,
Because
thing
they
is-
don't have they do not have an alternative opinion.
When was that published, Evo?
That was published April 30th, 2018.
Yeah, so you see what's happening here. So this gets published April. They've already developed the vaccine for the winter this year. They would have
Yep.
started that last winter
Yeah.
when they did it. When they went and found the viruses that were going around last year, they
In
used,
Northern Hemisphere,
in
so
the
in
northern
January,
hemisphere.
yeah.
So use the northern hemisphere bug
Yeah.
in January, or whatever. They get 6 months to work it, create a vaccine, pump it, experiment out on us.
But do you want another little issue with they had a big push on last year to get everyone vaccinated. I don't know if you remember the ads on TV and
For the flu vaccine,
yeah, the
Yep.
elderly and all that sort of thing.
Oh, this is
And-
cool, man.
Yeah, the data, I remember it, was, here we go. In 2016, they had 91,000 cases of confirmed flu, right? The
Right.
bad flu.
Yeah.
After that big push in 2017, massive push of vaccines and all that, they got 250,000 cases.
Wow. Okay.
So it more than doubled.
And what was their explanation for that?
It was a bad flu year.
Bad flu year. So we need to vaccinate more. So this is why they use those sort of data to justify the fact that, so we had 90,000, then 250. So this year's probably going to 500,000 people will get the flu because of the rates it's going. So we need to vaccinate more. Even though the evidence shows it didn't do anything.
Yeah.
In fact, it was worse.
It's kind of weird.
Because you understand too, so you gave a quick summary of how the vaccines work before, Jeff, but so understand, so when your immune system samples something, so your immune system's sampling everything that comes through. And what the immune cells do, these like dendritic cells or these other, they're called antigen presenting cells, they get this baddie, they rip it into bits, they break it into fragments, and then they present it out to their mates. The naive immune cells that come out like wide, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, what are we going to do? What are we going to kill? They go, here, look at this. Anything that has a little marker like this, just go and smash it. You run out to the skin, you go to the tonsils, you go down here, and anything that looks like this, just kill it. Okay. So what the whole concept of vaccine is presenting one of these fragments of a bug or presenting a bug or something to the immune cell so they rip it apart. Now understand, when you get a cold and a flu and you get fevers, you get aches and pains, you get inflammation and all those horrible things, it's actually your immune response creates those symptoms. So those people that get the flu vaccine, not only do they not get the immune protection, but they actually get injected with an antigen to trigger an immune response. So it gives them flu-like symptoms.
Yeah,
so when you
important.
have the flu vaccine, you are giving yourself a version of a flu. So you will give yourself an antigen which will induce an immune response, which will trigger fevers and aches and pains. Hopefully,
Headaches, malaise.
the antibodies then are translated to the naive immune cells, so they've acquired an antibody response and can go through and effectively kill things. Otherwise, all you've done is presented a dead bug or a live bug or something to your immune cells where they've triggered a reaction as if you've had a cold and a flu.
Right.
So you may never have had a cold or a flu that season, but you're going to have one if you have the flu vaccine.
But
Exactly.
what they argue, obviously, is that the side effects that happen are obviously on a much reduced scale. You're only getting minor, flu-like symptoms as opposed to like the full-blown flu.
You don't get the flu. You just get the effects of the flu,
Yeah.
which can last about a week, and the flu lasts 7 days
Right.
instead of a week.
So same.
So it just depends, the theory is what you said, it's
Yeah.
that it's not as exaggerated
Yes.
because you don't have a full-blown infection.
Yeah.
But it kind of feels much the same.
And there's some other things about the flu vaccine, which, as I said, I understand
Can I give you
premise.
some good news of the flu vaccine?
Why? Yeah,
Go for it.
There's no aluminium in the flu vaccine.
Well, that's what you know. What, Steve, you must have been reading my mind, because I was just thinking. But for me as well, too. Again, I always come back, and I don't care whether it's vaccines or what have you. I always like nature is best.
Yeah.
Right. And aluminium. We did the podcast Aluminium Alert. If anyone wants to familiarise themselves with that.
It's got to be preserved with something.
Oh,
What?
well, all right. There's a bit of mercury in there.
So thimerosal. So thimerosal, wasn't it after 9/11, and then wasn't George Bush and the Homeland Security Bill said you can't sue the makers of thimerosal. In amongst the thing, and then remember that they said, "What the hell's that? What's thimerosal?" And everyone goes, "Oh, that's the mercury preservative that goes into the vaccines they're going to give to the military." And so the military can't go back and sue the government for vaccination reactions from thimerosal. They also linked it to everything. They took thimerosal out of all the MMRs, the measles, mumps, rubella. They took thimerosal out of a lot of
them,
they banned thimerosal in a lot of the vaccines we give to children, but they're still using it in this.
So what does mercury do when it's injected, which is obviously very different from being absorbed through the skin or being orally taken? So when it's injected, what does it do?
It's straight in the bloodstream. If you had a mercury filling, those fillings, and you accidentally swallowed it, you would low likelihood of toxicity because mercury doesn't get absorbed over the GI tract.
Right.
The problem is when you chew on your teeth, the mercury is released into your lungs and that's absorbed in the body. So it's a trace amount, but it's still very dangerous because it's a fat-soluble mineral. So it stays in your body. It's neurotoxic for your brain, causes all sorts of things.
For that reason, Steve, I had quite a lot of fillings, very soft teeth. In fact, almost every tooth in my mouth had fillings in it when I was growing up. I replaced them all with caps and porcelain and all the rest of it. So for that reason, now I wasn't suffering any side effects, and some people don't, but some people do, and they've said that since they've actually taken out their aluminium fillings, that they feel a lot better for it. So the mercury one.
There's a little bit more bad news to run by.
Bring it on.
It is preserved with something else too.
What?
Formaldehyde.
Okay, yeah, right, that's handy. Yep.
But what's the impact, Steve, of both the mercury and the formaldehyde on the systems, on the amount that are inside? Now, again, everybody is different.
It
Some
triggers a
people
humoral immune response is one of the challenges.
Yeah.
So this is it. So just quickly, I'll get back. I'll let you have a word. Let me tell you something cool.
Okay.
So because this links into why the change of the season creates colds and flus as well.
Right.
And this is one of the reasons why these vaccination concepts kind of increase our risk of infection rather than prevent it. Our immune system's split like a seesaw, where one side kills infections and the other side flushes away allergies.
Mm-hmm.
So when, like a seesaw, when one side's up, the other side's down. So, and the change of season, everything starts to change. Okay, things start flowering, other stuff starts dying. You know, we get a lot of these weird changes in pollens, dust, bacterial exposures, and that sort of stuff. But parasites and that sort of stuff can thrive at different times of the year. So pollens, foods, dust, pollutions. Change in temperature in the air, and that sort of stuff can significantly change our mucosa, and that sort of stuff with temperature change. All of those things drive up our flushing allergic responses. Mercuries, other toxins and pollutants and chemicals will also trigger a humoral flushing response because there's nothing there that the immune cells can actually engulf and remove as part of this inflammatory challenge. So it triggers a systemic inflammatory humoral response. And all of those things release these chemicals that tell the body our priority is flushing away these large things. Like parasites, pollens, foods are massive compared to a microbe or a virus. And in doing so, the resources towards our anti-infectious defense are suppressed. So we actually get predisposed to infections and cancers and that sort of stuff by suppression of our anti-infectious defense.
Right.
Just what I'm talking about. So those sort of toxins do that. Those pollutants and everything do that. And those preservatives will all drive that up, just like colorings and flavorings and additives in processed and rubbishy food. They all drive that predisposing to infection. Then when you get infection, if you go back to the doctor and use an antibiotic or a corticosteroid cream or one of those anti-inflammatory symptomatic relief, the way they make you feel better is by suppressing the immune system again. Remember when I said when you get a challenge from a vaccine, you feel like you got the flu?
Yeah.
It's actually your immune system that makes you feel lousy, not the bug.
Yeah.
So what actually happens is when people go, they feel lousy because their immune system's fighting stuff because things have been allowed to grow. They then take a treatment like an antibiotic or a prednisone or something like that to reduce the severity of their or they think they're taking it to kill the bug because they take this stuff and they feel better.
Yeah.
They think the bug's gone. No, your immune system's been suppressed. So that's a big part of the cycle of infection.
A lot of that has to do with the argument that we have. I subscribe to, which is around fevers, especially for children as well too. If it's not dangerous, if it's not getting to the point where it's above a certain level, the fever is actually there to do a job, which is to kill off the bugs by using things like paracetamol and other things like that to take the edge of it. Yes, the baby has a better night's sleep, which is and also the parent can need that as well too. But as far as killing off the bug is concerned, Tony and I always used to monitor the temperature, so long as it didn't get into those dangerous levels. Of course, that's different. Oh, yeah. But allow the fever to actually kill off the bug as it was intended.
But also using such processes, what we call diaphoretics, which are things that will increase your sweating, and other things like damp cloths and fans and things to reduce the fever, keep it in a safe level without using an immune suppressant. I can't remember, this is another one of those stats that I made up on the spot.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. But remember, I don't know, you might remember. Remember there was a study talked about for every 1 degree that your temperature goes up, you get it was something like a 50 times increase in natural killer cell activity. Remember those? So
I can't remember
the exact numbers, but it was something like I'm pretty sure it was 50 times the increase in the natural killer cell activity per 1 degree increase. So
let's look into that and come back. Maybe post it up on...
You asked me a great question about what the effects of formaldehyde and mercury on the brain.
On the body.
The honest answer is because they don't do clinical trials on this, they don't know. Because
it's not ethical.
Yeah. Well, they just don't do clinical trials on the flu vaccine because it's...
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But there was a prospective study on the effects on children, and they followed one brand. And again, this is a fairly new study, and they found out that there was a 5 to 14-fold increase in kids developing narcolepsy. They were just simply falling asleep, like sort of passing out for no reason.
Wow.
They just sit there. Narcolepsy is people falling asleep inappropriately.
Wow.
And that was a mercury formaldehyde?
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, that's hey, Jeff, like as the managing director with the ATP stuff, we have a stage gate system that we use for product development.
Yep.
Can you imagine trying to run that within 6 months?
No.
Like, we take years to develop product. To go through our stage gate system of, the research, the literature review, all these thousands of documents we have to go through, and then all of the trial phases and the quality control, all that sort of stuff. Can you imagine running a stage gate system within 6 months to create a drug that is insisted that every man, woman and child uses without any trials or anything?
Well, look, we're a light, agile company as well too. We're not a massive organisation with multiple departments having.
But we would
thousands
we
of
could never
employees.
do that.
No,
we could never even.
Well, when you were talking to me about that, I'm like, how did they? I wasn't actually going to say anything. It's like, how do they actually get that out on time with the information? Well, not logistically.
You can tell they have to be manufacturing and making this thing before they've done any research.
Or they don't, and then they just manufacture it at the last minute.
They just have a bit of a guess, educated guess of which strain to put in there, and then they just hope for the best. And honestly, that's all they can do. If this thing works,
well, you got 6 months.
Let's say it's 100% effective. Then all they've got to do is go, right, these are the viruses in the northern hemisphere. Let's hopefully it'll travel 7,000 kilometres. It doesn't change. It doesn't mutate. Doesn't have any antigenic shifting or anything like that. It doesn't change, and you have to make a vaccine, and then you have to manufacture it for millions of people in the southern hemisphere. You can't trial.
Do you know this whole stuff has totally ruined like Batman and everything for me?
Batman.
Yeah, man, because seriously, like every time that poison ivy would turn everyone into a tree, he just quickly goes home, makes a vaccine, sprays it across the city.
Oh, yeah.
He was a hero, Like I always looked at these superheroes that would quickly pump this sort of stuff out. It's probably part of the propaganda that
hang on.
tricked me into
Wasn't that
thinking...
Uma Thurman?
That was one of the worst Batmans ever. They had Dr. Freeze in it, and that was a terrible Batman.
Yeah, there's heaps... No, I'm not talking movies. I'm reading my little books for the kids.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
And they're doing these things where every time someone does something weird like that, he quickly goes home, whips up a vaccine out of someone that he saved, and then sprays it across the city. And I'm thinking, good on you, Batman, you saved the day. But no, he's part of the machine.
Yeah,
he's just
amazing.
a pawn for the man.
Part of Big Brother.
Part of propaganda.
Well, look, mate, if you don't want to get a vaccine and you're going to get the flu, you can always take Tamiflu.
Yeah, really, Steve-O.
Yeah.
That's the SARS, swine flu, avian flu. And why would I? What? Well, tell me more about this. Sell it to me.
Because all right, well, I'll sell it to you. Okay,
all right.
flu lasts for 7 days, right? Now we want to knock that thing over as quick as possible, all right?
Oh yeah.
Now meta-analysis, which is huge studies on Tamiflu, when it's given a dose correctly by a doctor, all this sort of stuff, reduces the flu from 7 days to 6.3 days.
Hang on, Steve, and you're being a bit cheeky here. I'm going to pull you up.
All right.
Because what about for the elderly and the young that have a high risk of death?
Sorry. Young people, elderly, pregnant people have never been studied. It's unethical to actually study and test that product on those people.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're the people that are told they have to use it because they're high risk, but they're not allowed to be studied on them.
But okay, well, what about then the fact that we can acknowledge that more of those people die because of the flu? So
but not at Sunday lunchtime. Like, I mean, what I'm saying is if you get the flu one Sunday, what Steve-O's saying is instead of the following Sunday evening you're feeling better, it's the following Sunday morning tea you're feeling better. Well, so the Tamiflu will save the people that were about to die at lunch on Sunday.
With the kids, I can tell you that there were kids tested in this, and it said the effect in children was not significant.
Cool.
Who published that report?
That was published. Let's see which reference is that. Says 7, going to 7, 4, 5, 6, 7. That was published. That was a Cochrane database systemic review.
Okay, well, I was going to say.
So it's a big study.
Because, I mean, Cochrane is the gold standard.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So this is some little hippie bunch of tree huggers down in Nimbin who put together this review based on 3 people. Yeah. No, okay, it's Cochrane.
No.
So hang on, Steve, you had another Cochrane review with vaccinations, didn't you? That had some crazy-ass stats. Right. Because you were saying before it's 10% effective, which means you got to vaccinate, 10 people to get 1 person covered?
Yep.
So they felt that it was 10% effective. So for every 10 vaccines, 1 person's covered. But the Cochrane review
sound
on the flu vaccine found...
71 people would need to be vaccinated to avoid 1 influenza case.
You know what? Those are the odds I love if I'm a pharmaceutical company.
You really?
Well,
you'd love it if you sell cough mix, If you sell symptomatic relief for colds and flus, you love it because when they get vaccinated, they feel like they got a cold and flu. So they go and buy their cough mixes. And you know what the best cough mix is that I found ever? The best thing to prevent a cough is a laxative.
Tamiflu.
Oh, I was going to say Irish moss.
Man, seriously, instantly they stop coughing. They're like...
Yeah.
You give someone with a bad cough a laxative. And that's why laughter's the best medicine except for diarrhea and asthma. Yes. They're the two things you don't want to use to prescribe laughter.
Oh.
But the
reminds me of this woman that I saw one time on a trampoline. Why would you go on a trampoline if you had diarrhea? And she's jumped up and she's landed on her bum and... Seriously, it was like
gone through the
like a hydrant. Bush.
Oh no!
There's an image all of our listeners not going to be able to get out
because my trampoline's got like that. It's not like a solid plastic like the one we grew up on. They're all mesh now.
Yeah.
So just
you
can't fall off like you used to.
Mate, I can fall off anything.
Oh,
and my kids are just like me. They fall. We got one of them ones with a cage around the outside.
Yeah.
The thing's constantly on its side because they constantly jump and hit the walls and knock the whole thing over.
We never had those walls as a kid growing up.
Man, I could have done with some of those spring-free trampolines when I was younger. The amount of times where those things pinched my legs or
but we survived.
Yep.
Anywho.
So it's a little bit of bad news.
So the doctors.
With the flu. Sorry about that.
So basically, if you go to the doctor for the cold and the flu, if it's a viral infection, there's nothing really they can do.
Well, Tamiflu's useless.
Tamiflu's useless, and that's their main antiviral. I mean, they've got other for specific viruses like herpes and HIVs and all those sort of stuff like. There's other antiviral sort of drugs, but when it comes to a change of season, the cold and flu virus that's mutated from one year to the next. Using old school medicine, supporting your body's natural defense mechanisms makes more sense than trying to create a silver bullet that's going to annihilate these things because it's just not the way world works and they just keep mutating anyway.
Well, the thing for me as well too, before we get into maybe some ways that you can try and support your immune system to reduce the side effects, make you a bit more resilient, definitely, improve your chances of surviving the flu if you're older as well too. These are things that you should be doing every day, not just to support your immune system, but your general, well-being and health. And many people, as we see, are deficient in a lot of these basic nutrients, and there's some other things, I'm sure you and Steve are going to talk about herbs and things like that can help as well too in short periods of time. But before we get into that, the thing for me that really upsets me a lot with when I hear about people in the health industry, aged care workers and childcare workers and all the rest of it, being forced, effectively saying if you have to do this, it's actually against what came together after the Second World War, where they went through the charter.
Mass medicating's illegal.
Yeah. It is, because this is what the Germans did. It's part of the what's the overarching global government that we have now that we bow down to?
World Health Organization.
As part of that, but. Anyway, the thing that came out of the Second World War, my mind's gone blank. That they came out with a charter, basically for human rights, and one of those things is that you weren't. It replaced the League of Nations. Why can I not think of the name of this massive organisation? Who are the troops with the blue caps?
Throw it out to the audience.
I know who you mean. I'll think of him. Yeah.
Anyway,
UN, United Nations.
Yeah, United Nations.
Bloody hell. So I can remember League of Nations, but I can't remember United Nations. Anyway,
the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
No.
Yes.
But what it came
down
to...
Why didn't they make a sequel of that?
No, I don't think it did that well.
Steve was fantastic.
Quatermain.
I love that.
Yeah. Anyway, what I was going to say is that had Van Helsing, had everything, but I don't know, it didn't work. But what it comes down to, though, is that forced medication was massive through Nazi Germany, right? And they said that nobody would ever be forced to take medication ever again. But yet they're effectively saying...
water, they insist on vaccinations.
Well, we're not forced to drink the water, but they're kind of getting around it, because you can go buy spring water. But if they start then eroding, we're not going to have spring water now because of plastic contamination and blah, 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 they can get around it. But that's the thing that worries me big time, is actually the erosion of your rights and your ability to say no. That's what scares me more than anything.
And your ability to question. Like, medicine's not a religion. Going to your doctor, asking for evidence and proof and saying all this sort of stuff should not offend them. No. Like, they should be able to actually go through and say, hey, yeah, of course, we've looked right into this. And it's your body, of course. Let's discuss this together and make a decision together based on... It's like, no, you do it. I know what's best for you. You will do what I say.
It feels very religious.
They don't care.
Back in the Dark Ages with the Templars and unless you do what I say,
that's what
how
they're
dare
doing.
you question me? Well, we heard, Matt, that story of the woman that went to the doctor recently and was prescribed some medication. I can't remember exactly what it was. And all that she did was she said, before I administer that to myself or to my child, I'd like to look at the
ingredient list,
the counter, the side effects, and contraindications, and all the rest of it. So Reddit came back and said, look, I can't for these reasons. Can you explain to me, why you didn't tell me about it in the first place, and can we discuss this because I'm looking for an alternative that I can give to my child, I think it was.
Yeah.
The doctor flew into a rage. It basically, how dare you, and effectively walked this woman back out to the front and said, I'm not talking to you.
Wow. There's another one that basically said, I don't want to do it because it's preserved with aluminium. I said, no, it's not. Then they said, get us the flyer. So they got the flyer out and showed the ingredients included aluminium. They said, see, it isn't, and just spat the dummy and said, go away.
Jeez.
But so the funny thing, but you got to realise too that the doctors can't even go back and question the medical association without being kicked out. So don't forget too, doctors get even more trouble. So like we go through and say to doctors, I want you to think outside the box. I want you to be my naturopath as well as my doctor. The doctor goes back to the medical association to review or ask a question. Then they get struck off the medical board. They get in big trouble too. So that's what I'm saying. It's like this big weird cult where you can't question. You just got to do what you're told, and the rest of us suffer the consequences.
You just have to question, and don't just accept, as I said, we say what anybody says, because there's everything needs to be challenged and questioned.
We need perspective. So, for example, when you were talking about the Tamiflu case, what that reminded me a lot of was the exact same research they said for vitamin C.
Oh, yeah.
So don't forget, vitamin C reduces the duration of a cold and a flu by and then this vitamin C study, they said 3 days is a typical cold and flu, and it reduced it by 2 to 3 hours over 3 days, which is almost exactly the same as the Tamiflu over 7 days, doing it by 5 to 6 hours. So vitamin C, vitamin C will reduce the duration of a cold and flu a little bit, obviously, but what it does do is it reduces the severity of a cold and flu by controlling mast cell degranulation, inflammation, oxidative stress, and that sort of stuff. So when we're looking at these drug treatments and that sort of stuff, if you want to use an antibiotic or a cortisone to make you feel better, they're doing it by suppressing your immune system and creating immune dysregulation and microbiome problems and fungal overgrowth and parasite overgrowth and that sort of stuff. When you use a natural product to stimulate your immune system's response, you still feel lousy because your immune system's up. You still get all that sort of stuff, but you can also stack it with some compounds that also help to reduce some of the symptoms and side effects and make you feel better without suppressing your immune system. And that's the beauty of natural medicines. You can create a bit of a holistic protocol and show how it all works. For example, there's lots of cool research now where they're combining things like turmeric with other immune-stimulating herbs to show better effects. Like, for example, turmeric's a very good anti-inflammatory and what we call an NRF2 activator, which we talk about a fair bit. Turmeric's so what it'll do, if you combine turmeric in with the other immune-stimulating herbs, turmeric reduces the amount of inflammation, reduces the amount of mucus, reduces the amount of aches and pains associated with the immune. So it down-regulates the exaggerated immune response. So you actually feel better without actually getting in the way of the anti-infectious defense. In fact, it enhances the anti-infectious defense of the other herbs that you combine it with. So little things like that make it naturopathic prescriptions. But if we want, I want to talk a little bit about something positive and like how we can prepare ourselves for the change in season, protect ourselves, and then give some treatments.
Absolutely. And look, just before we go positive, I want to say this as well too. For the first, half of this podcast, we've really been giving, flu vaccines a bit of a bash, and rightly so, because again, there's a lot of poor information. There's a lot of really bad marketing out there. There's a lot of fear that drive people to do it. Same thing with vitamin C as well too. The natural health industry is not always a bastion of light that it should be either, because again, where there is fear and greed, where people can make money, they do the wrong things. Vitamin C has been completely overblown, I think, especially when you look at the synthetics. And again, have a look at the podcast. Are my vitamins,
And the
are your
doses.
vitamins killing you?
Yeah,
because
doses.
we have there's plenty of people to have a crack at. There's not light and dark here. There's shades of grey everywhere. There are definitely some evils, and there are hopefully some white knights out there. But yeah.
That's while we're talking about vitamin C. So we talked about how it reduces the duration of the colds and flus by a little bit, but it definitely reduces the severity of the cold and flu, and it does help to support a healthy immune system.
Sure.
The dose that we are taught to use in the health food stores, so the ladies in
those are the days.
I shouldn't say ladies, but the people that run in the nutrition section of these health food stores and that sort of stuff that are pumping out, they're just reading the brochures from these companies that are mainly pumping out ascorbic acid. So the doses that the research shows is you need about 150 milligrams up to about 500 milligrams of vitamin C per day to support your immune system to prevent or treat colds and flus. The most products in the market are 1,000 milligrams. So they're 500 or 1,000 to start with. So they're at the top end or double the actual dose. Then they're encouraged to have up to 6,000 milligrams per day. Basically, keep taking it until you get the green apple splatters is what they'll teach you. But those squirts that you get, that's actually not just from water-soluble vitamin C. That's the production of hydrogen peroxide on your membrane that's creating a damage to your membrane, creating leakiness and permeability in your gut, all reducing the integrity of your mechanical barrier. That's your first-line defense. So lower doses of vitamin C more often makes sense.
And not only that, they're synthetic as well too, are they, Matt?
Well, ascorbic acid's ascorbic acid, really. But, I mean, we got the...
There's no bioflavonoids, though. It's
no
just
bioflavonoids.
Sorry, that's what I mean. It's just a straight compound.
I'm glad you said that, because what's happening, I don't know if you've seen it, in my email stream, I subscribe to a few different newsletters and things like that. Everyone's talking about this mast cell degranulation syndrome or these eosinophilia syndromes and things like that. So people are talking about these immune cells that are all over the body releasing too much histamine, and that's causing all of these inflammatory problems, anything from fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. It'd actually be a really good podcast itself. This eosinophilia reactions and these mast cell releasing, so these chemokines and your interleukin 17s and TLB17, all those sort of things now, they're linking back to inflammation in the collagen, causing all these sort of problems, blah, blah, blah. What they are immune cells that release too much inflammatory compounds. The way to fix that is actually with these bioflavonoids. Bioflavonoids stabilize the mast cells and stop them from releasing histamine. So we can use antihistamines and all that sort of stuff to stop the rashing and the sneezing, or we can use quercetin, rutin, luteolin, those compounds that will actually stabilize the mast cell and stop it. So normally in nature, like for example, our vitamin C in our multifood is amla powder. So it comes from a fruit called the amla. And what it actually is 50% ascorbates, and it's 50% bioflavonoids and those sort of things that'll actually go through stabilize the mast cells. That's what you'll also find in nature. For example, perilla is one of my favourite herbs, perilla frutescens. You can make a salad out of it. It contains mega doses of luteolin. Studies on 200 milligrams of luteolin per day had a 90% inhibition of histamine within 24 hours, sort of thing. So significant changes and release of, I think it was over a month, not 24 hours. It took about a month, but then they got that 90% inhibition of histamine release. Means you're not taking antihistamines all the time. You don't release as much histamine, so you don't get as much inflammatory reaction. So,
and long-term use of histamines.
It's a mega doses of luteolin, but the rest of it is all these bioflavonoids and other nutritive factors.
Amazing.
Hey, something else I learned really recently. One of the other things that really controls eosinophilic reactions, especially in muscle tissue, that causes pain and is associated with DOMS, but also associated with immune problems and viruses and the fatigue from viruses, magnesium deficiency. It is crazy because, when we're doing this magnesium, a lot of magnesium research at the moment, and saying magnesium's an off switch. Make sure you're capable of switching off is the way I kind of explained it. The way magnesium works is it stops calcium from rushing into cells, and calcium's the on switch. So when you get an immune trigger, to say you got a virus here, it's actually calcium rushes into the cells to trigger the release of histamine. It's calcium that rushes into the cells that tells the body to release inflammatory mediators, to release oxidative give me some choker, I'll start her up. So what I'm saying is magnesium can actually be an off switch for a lot of reactions that we weren't aware of, including immune function and that sort of stuff. A magnesium deficiency means you have an exaggerated response to everything.
Wow.
Zinc deficiency.
Well, again, and there's not a lot that I know, Matt, but what you told me about zinc, especially for the immune system, is probably one of my go-to things.
No, I mean, I even printed off a thing. I'll give that to Steve-O to put into our notes. But I printed off this thingy, just a picture that basically shows all the different aspects of the immune cells from the... So what happens, I said the immune cells, they've got to rip stuff apart and show their mates. That is a zinc-dependent process.
Right. Yes.
And then when they show their mates these stuff, they also release these chemicals called cytokines. And these chemicals will say, hey, man, it's a virus or it's a bacteria or it's an allergen. And those chemicals will determine what sort of immune response they release. Zinc is required for those chemicals to be released.
Right.
Then, on the outside of the naive immune cells, they have these little antennas that pick up on those chemicals. So when the big immune generals yell out to the body to say, kill this stuff, so the big immune generals need zinc to be able to speak. The chemicals are all zinc dependent, and the antennas on the naive immune cells that don't know what they're doing are also zinc dependent.
Wow.
And so if you don't have zinc, then not only can your body not launch an initial defense, but you also can't initiate a systemic proper defense. Plus, then after your body's had a good chance to kill off all this stuff, a whole heap of chemicals come out to say, okay, chill out, back off now. They're all zinc dependent as well.
Too, yeah.
So if you've got a zinc deficiency, your immune system's an idiot. It has no idea what it's doing.
The base, I mean, I look at things, I mean, I can probably remember to explain that to my mum and to my family a bit better, but I think, Matt, you were saying that taking an adequate amount of zinc increases your immune system by like a factor of, was it 2 or 3 or even...
Depends how deficient you are.
Yeah. Of course, but I mean, it's significant impact on, it helps with white blood cells like phagocytes and lymphocytes and dendritic cells and all the rest of it, doesn't it? It helps with all of that, which powers your
cells.
Yeah, I heard him mention Jeffercytes in amongst there.
Jeffercytes.
They had with zinc deficiency, your body does not know it's got an infection,
right?
And it does not know it's supposed to fight it,
right?
And that's the big point. So, and the same thing with like zinc, your wounds don't heal, all that sort of stuff. So taking zinc, vitamin C's and that sort of stuff, making sure you're not deficient in those things is extremely important.
Yeah.
We often, here we talk about hormones a lot, and zinc is, incredibly important for your hormones and for your nails and all this sort of stuff. And that's absolutely true, but it really is an immune mineral, is the way when I first learnt about it. It's so
that's
important.
What we talked about, hey? Originally it was all about the immune system.
And guys lose more zinc than women. You want to explain that mechanism, Matt?
Nope.
No, but you can leave that to your imagination.
I'll tell you another interesting hormonal fact in regards to the immune system is estrogen dominance will drive up the anti-allergic defense. It makes you more predisposed to rashes, sneezing, hay fever, and is a main trigger for the mast cell degranulation. So those people that have regular histamine and allergies look at estrogen as a potential cause.
Yeah, estradiol is also a potent immune driver too, and that's why a lot of women get more autoimmune diseases. They get more.
And so what you were saying
lupus
before, though, when you were talking about after the event's over, zinc sends out the signal or is responsible for the hormones or everything coming out and saying, hey, chill off, calm down now. So people with autoimmune as well too, or a potential of developing it, zinc is going to be really important.
Yeah, it's a good one. Make sure they're not zinc deficient, but you don't want to overdose with zinc with something like a zinc picolinate.
Right.
That might bypass your natural absorption techniques. That's why it's good to use zinc gluconates and things like that. Because if you actually overload with zinc, you'll increase the amount of receptors and you'll increase the amount of immune activity too much and aggravate an immune. So you just want to make sure you're not deficient. But interesting fact of what you just said is what does usually precede all autoimmunity is adrenal exhaustion. And now if you can't control your hormones, if you can't control the hormonal pathways, if you've got a magnesium deficiency where you can't switch off your HPA axis, they are often causes for adrenal exhaustion anyway. So you're right, like it links, indirectly it links, but via the adrenal gland, predisposing to autoimmunity, because it's the adrenal gland that releases cortisol after about 10 seconds of immune activity to come out and say, just double check that you're not attacking the wrong stuff here.
But it's fascinating, man. And again, we spoke before about either ill-informed or Machiavellian nature of people selling natural supplements as well too, because when I was younger, when I was growing up and selling zinc products in my my store, zinc picolinate was the one to go to. But again, out of balance, higher doses the body's ability not to switch off. Vitamin C as well too, but no bioflavonoids. Again, people taking mega dosage, but they're not. It's not efficient. It's not effective. It's sort of forcing stuff to happen as opposed to working with the body's natural, biosystem.
But you can understand why it happens because you're one that says it a lot too. It's like people want to feel something. People want to feel things. They want to feel that you're inducing change. Now, when you're doing natural studies, like for the first 5 years in clinic, I was very guilty of doing exactly the same thing. I went in everything hard, big mega doses, made sure they felt something. Right. Like I was making sure we're turning people inside out, putting them through hell. You got to get worse before you get better. This is a healing crisis. We can't treat your symptoms until we treat the cause. Yeah. And you get them coming back, and you put them through hell. And this is pain. This is what life's all about. This is what I was taught. And then you're actually starting to realise, look, this is not quite right. And then you start backing things off a little bit, start working back with the laws of nature, and you realise that a lot of the stuff that you were taught in your training was taught to you by companies trying to sell products, and their only form of innovation or their only form of weighing that they're saying they're better than the others is to have a stronger dose, or enhanced bioavailability, or one of those crappy things people talk about. Right. Because as we learn more about microbiome and mucosal immunity, this whole phase of enhanced bioavailability is going to be looked back at as the biggest joke ever. It's
you pick on picolinate, which is perfectly right to pick on picolinate because it's absorbed straight in because zinc is bound with picolinic acid, which absorbs straight in. Too much zinc is a known suppressant of the immune system. So people go, oh God, I'm sick. Zinc's good for my immune system, so I need tons more. And they suppress their immune system further. They get sicker further, and possibly zinc toxicity. It's just a terrible thing, and they get copper deficiencies and all sorts of things are out of whack.
So you get the imbalance in between the ions, and then you're binding because it's a chelating agent. So I said earlier that if you take too much zinc, it'll overstimulate your immune system and aggravate autism. And Steve's just said if you overtake zinc, it'll suppress your immune system. Yeah. Wow. So what we're looking at in autoimmunity, it's a confused messenger system with all these receptors. Yep. If you overload on zinc and build too many receptors, then you get too much specific attack on immune tissue, but your total immune cells may reduce, but their specific nature of attacking a tissue will be aggravated.
That's interesting.
That's kind of crazy, but that's why you go back to nature. It's too bloody complicated to be smarter than nature. Hey, you try to bypass the laws of nature and force shit to happen in the body, then the body goes, hey, man, I'm not designed for that.
Every time I read an immune paper, I pick up a new cytokine I've never heard of, or a new cell I'm going to discover.
Chemical messengers. They're the things telling your body, make snot or make fever or make pain. They're the things that do it. And then the problem, which confuses me mostly about cytokines, is they keep changing the name of these chemicals depending where they come from. Yeah. If they're from an immune cell, they call them a cytokine. If they're from a fat cell, they'll call them an adipokine. If they're released from a muscle cell, they'll be called a myokine. But at the end of the day, they're released from all of those places at all exactly the same time because that's our innate defense mechanisms. So you can't. This is why you can't have a specialist specializing in gut or immune or any of that stuff because all of these chemicals, they're the same chemicals released from immune cells, nerve endings, muscles, fat, tissues all over your body all at once. The new frontier for the body controlling mechanism is the interstitium. So now everyone's going to be talking about the interstitial spaces. It's because it's the watery bits between all the stuff that we've already been talking about. And now they're finding that's where all the chemicals are actually sitting. So we don't worry about all these other bits and pieces because it's all sitting in the interstitium. We've got to target that. But like I keep saying, you go back to the laws of nature. A lot of these different compartments in the body are regulated by the mucosal immunity, where 80% of your immune system's found. So 80% of your immune system is found on your gut wall. And then from there, that's where it's programmed and sent to other parts of your body to actually do things. So to anything we want to do, like seriously, I would love to see the difference in stats between an injected vaccine versus an oral vaccine interacting with a mucosa. Because our mucosal, our molt and our GALT, is our mucosal and associated lymphoid tissue, is where your immune system is found. That's when your immune memory is made. That's where antigen-presenting cells are teaching the naive cells of what to do. And in that instance, that's where our natural medicine works. So most of our natural medicine works by interacting with a mucosa. For example, if you have a look at reishi mushrooms, one of the reasons why I love Ganoderma reishi mushrooms is they are so damn clever. So what they do is, I said before, a lot of bugs a lot of immune cells will grab bugs, rip them to bits and show their mates. Some bugs, things like envelope viruses, and some bugs, the immune cells suck them in. They don't die. They thrive. They go, you little ripper, I'll just live in here. These immune cells so full of fuel. The body's putting all its nutrients in the immune cells, so the immune cell start stealing all the fuel out of the immune cells. Next thing you know, the immune cell's trying to tell their mates, hey, there's viruses here, but this virus is sitting in there going, no, I'm not here. And then what happened? He screws up the chemicals that are released. So, for example, certain viruses, a lot of the mosquito-borne viruses, herpes viruses, and those sort of things, they'll actually get into the immune cells, happily live. This is how glandular fever keeps coming back. The Epstein-Barr virus is a classic one for this. Live inside the immune cells happily. Feed on all the stuff that the immune system's got. And the more you support your immune system with mega doses of nutrients and foods and tonic things like ginsengs and astragalus and even those herbs, which we would say are good for prevention but bad during acute, because they will actually tonify your immune system and tonify the virus that's living inside the immune cell. And the whole time it's in there, it's sending these messages saying, no virus is here. No virus is here.
Wow.
You should just focus on those allergies. And what happens is with the Epstein-Barr virus and these things, they will actually tell the immune cells not to teach the naive immune cells that there's viruses, but instead teach the naive immune cells that we've got dust, pollen, foods to flush it. You go to the sinus and make snot, and you forget all about viruses. Clever, hey?
Yeah,
reishi mushroom goes in, it damages the envelope shell, helps the immune cells to kill the bug. But what it mainly does is it goes through and says, hang on, there's a virus here. Look at that sneaky little bastard sitting in there. So Ganoderma will go through and say, forget about the allergies for now. I've found a virus. That little spy has been sitting in there the whole time.
It's a double agent.
Yeah, and it sends. And then what happens? So Ganoderma goes through and says, hang on, now I'm going to compromise your shell here, and I'm going to let everyone know that you're here, you bastard.
Cool.
And so that's why you go straight in with any mosquito-borne viruses, weird-ass viruses, glandular fevers, and that. You don't want to give those people ginsengs, astragalus, mega doses of juicing and all that sort of stuff. That's going to put a lot of sugars into the bloodstreams. And you want to starve the virus, and you want to feed it the things like the Ganoderma mushroom. Another thing that's really good at breaking up the shell is St. John's wort. That's probably been that Hypericum. It's been probably most well studied out of all the herbs for knocking off envelope viruses like HIV and herpes and that sort of stuff. Problem is it's got so many interactions with other drugs. So because it also helps
CYP3A4, so it aids in the detoxification of drugs, which might sound great, but unless you're on a drug that's keeping your blood thin and you get a clot and die.
So St. John's wort's not as likely, and most people use it as an antidepressant. But it was always the best antiviral. So like a lot of those sort of things. So for viruses, and this is why the herbs are really cool. You have things like echinacea. Echinacea is probably one of the most common ones.
That would definitely be.
A classic one for more is not better.
Yes.
So all the research on echinacea shows it works like on the doses on a bell curve. So basically lots of little doses during an infection or around flu season works. If you take big doses regularly, or if you take small doses regularly, you basically take it regularly, it stops working.
Wow.
You need to take little bits often when you've got a cold and a flu, and that's the way it works.
And that's really funny. I remember hearing this several years ago, actually, Matt, probably you as well too, where you go down to the health food store and it's like, I think there was a campaign that they had, cold and flu season coming, get onto the echinacea now, and it's like, they were presenting it in the wrong way. It's like kind of get into this and take it through the entire winter season. Yeah. Whereas I think, Matt, you said to me, no, just keep that in the back drawer.
Keep it in the first aid kit.
Keep that in the top drawer, and if you get sick, then use it.
And pick your battles.
Yeah, exactly.
It tastes bloody horrible. So you can't get your kids taking mega doses every day, is it? But Chinese wormwood, Artemisia. Check this herb out. So this is the herb I think it's the first in history of a herbal compound that is now a drug. They didn't change it because they couldn't perfect it. They couldn't make it better. So its natural form is now an anti-malaria drug.
Wow.
Yeah, and because it's got multiple compounds that work synergistically together. So beyond malaria, there's a really cool paper. Actually, I think that's the title of the paper, Artemisia Beyond Malaria.
Yeah, you actually sent it to me. It is that one.
Yeah, it's an excellent paper, and it was basically showing how this Chinese wormwood, in low doses as a salad herb, it's known as sweet Annie when you sell it as a salad herb, a lettucey sort of thing. Low doses, it works like a modbiotic. It helps to prevent parasites. It helps to build up your good bugs, kill off the bad bugs, and keep everything under control. In a mega doses, it was a 90% inhibition of malaria in 20 hours of that. So it kills off malaria. But now it's also been shown off to knock off a lot of the mosquito-borne viruses. It's antibacterial, it's antiviral, it's antifungal, it's antiparasitic, and it's also helps to, at a low dose regularly, prevent infections as well. Absolutely brilliant herb. And you change the dose depending on what your goal is. Yeah. But you see here, like, what I really want to do is show people too, like, because we talked about the hype and the selling and the fear and greed. Let me totally screw with you and tell you what you can grow in your garden or buy at the salad aisles and that sort of stuff to prevent colds and flus. You don't need to be rushing out buying mega products. We need to understand the fact that your immune system's knocked out of whack because of potential allergies and intolerances and that sort of stuff, and get your histamine under control. The best way to get the histamine under control is start eating perilla every day. That herb, Perilla frutescens, throw it into your salads. Mix it in with a bit of Vietnamese mint and that sort of stuff. Vietnamese mint's got the same sort of compounds in it. A lot of the mints actually do. So a lot of the mints have got these antihistamine compounds, so making lots of salads with that sort of stuff. Thyme and oregano, a couple of the most potent local antiseptics, meaning they'll sterilise and kill off a lot of bugs that are coming through. They've got very good antiviral properties. You can throw thyme, coriander. Where did coriander come from? All of a sudden, I just threw that one in. So thyme, rosemary, oregano, basil. That was the one. Basil is amazingly very powerful antimicrobial, antiviral, antibacterial. So throwing in it, making salads, lots of basil, oregano, thyme, lots of mint. Dandelion has got a lot of antiviral properties, and it's from the leaf, so using that horrible bitter, anything that bloody horrible is going to scare away a bug.
Oh yeah, it's lovely
the
taste,
Vietnamese mint and the perilla, so make those sort of things. Lots of garlic, lots of ginger and that sort of thing.
Cayenne peppers, you cook with peppers.
Yeah, that's right.
Really important stuff.
And then to get into all that sort of stuff, and lots of colours, because we've talked about zinc, and zinc you'll get from nuts and seeds and that sort of stuff. But you want lots of colours, because you want lots of vitamin A and your carotenoids coming out of everything from tomato paste to anything that's got a dark, intense colour is going to be loaded up with lycopene.
Capsicums.
That's where you're going to get your vitamin A's and that
States.
sort of stuff. Yeah. So, and you can throw all those sort of things into a juicer if you really want to, but most of these things are going to be found in the pulp and the fibre in the highest doses. So you're going to be throwing away the best stuff. Elderflower, that Zambucus nigra, that's probably the most well-studied. I'd say that's probably the... Irish moss is still my favourite for breaking up a cough. Breaking up coughs are just as an expectorant, they call it. So an expectorant makes it easier to remove the waste. Yeah. So if you're looking at viruses... I went looking for Irish moss the other day, sorry.
Yeah, I could not find it. It went to the...
it's old school.
I even went to a health... So I went to pharmacy... went to a health food store. Oh, no, sorry, we don't stock there. It's just like, wow.
Bloody hard, eh? We might have to make one of them.
Also, something you can get from a pharmacy that's natural is camphor. Camphor is actually a great cough suppressant too. I took some before this talk because I got some of that. And
Do you like the smell of mothballs? They're really hard to spread their legs.
Wow.
But if you can get in there, I love the smell of mothballs. Camphor.
Yeah, it's a mothball. Gee whiz.
What do you got a mothball in? What have you got if you got a mothball in this end and a mothball in this end? Fucking big moth.
Big moth, yeah, absolutely huge moth.
Yeah, anyway. So, hey, so what I was trying to say, what I was saying is, so with coughs and symptom relief, understand, so viruses, typically you get a lot more... Viruses, when you get that dry cough, or you just get a little bit of clear mucus and that sort of stuff, you know something's not right. It's dry, it's painful, it's tickly, it's annoying. That's usually in the viral phase. With bacteria make pus all the time. Hey, they're very wet, fluidy, pussy sort of things, because the immune cell eats them quite effectively with the bacteria, and the dead bacteria in immune cells is what pus is. Right. So with bacteria is when you get the coloured phlegm, and so often you get an infection. Initially, it's in a viral form when you get that dryness and everything like that. Then once you've been coughing, so when you get that dry bark and that irritation, you cough, that inflammation starts making mucus as part of the flushing reaction. That mucus then is predisposed to getting infected by bacteria. So often they'll prescribe an antibiotic to treat a secondary bacterial infection. But if you do good cough mixes, so if you make up a good cough mix with things like thyme and elderflowers and all that sort of stuff to soothe the throat, they're also antimicrobial and antiseptic. meaning that they will get into the mucus, provide an antiseptic thing. Because otherwise the mucus sits there, it gets deprived of oxygen, it gets deprived of immune activity, it becomes a source of fuel, and other bugs actually live in there and thrive. If we can have things like thyme, oregano, licorice. Oh man, I can't believe I forgot to talk much about licorice. Is absolutely amazing because it's a very powerful anti-inflammatory. It resembles corticosteroids' effect on the mucosa by taking away the inflammation significantly. But if you've got a virus or a bacteria, it doesn't matter. It stops them from replicating. So they just fizzle out and die off while it's treating the symptoms, which is kind of cool. So
I remember when you gave me that licorice and bark. You go, here, try this. And I'm like, you gave me these little bits of, like wood chip almost, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Looks weird, doesn't it?
Man, it's amazing.
Tastes nice though, eh?
Oh, it's amazing.
Because it's 60 times sweeter than sugar, won't raise your blood sugar levels. But when you eat the sticks and twigs, you just get that pure licorice essence flavour without all the molasses and sugar. You know, it's actually a good way to do it, but really good as a herbal tea and that sort of stuff as well, or just in a fluid extract. In fact, in a lot of Chinese medicine, you'll see in a lot of Chinese formulas, licorice and ginger are added to most formulas because they enhance the activity of the other herbs, according to Chinese medicine. But if you do a licorice, ginger, you know, fennel, thyme, anise, those sort of things, they all help to. And a lot of those things you get, like if you hear what I just said, the fennel, thyme, anise, they're all in my cupboard at home.
Yeah, and
they're in my spice thing, and you can throw them into cups and teas and then mix them into a bit of honey. So for my boys, for example, we'll boil up all these herbs. And you know, they talk about infusions, which is basically just putting in a cup of tea and letting it sit for 15 minutes. Decoctions, when you put it in the saucepan and boil off about 30% of the water. So you really concentrate it there. So that's what I typically do for the boys. I'll boil it down, and then we take that stuff out and mix it into a bit of honey, and that just soothes their throat.
It's funny though, star anise, fennel, aniseed, have all they kind of got a similar sort of back note properties.
Oh man, you know what's really nice is caraway seeds. Hey, I really like the flavour. I chew them a lot. They really help the fluid in the ear. And the process of chewing caraway seeds, what's happening? You can imagine that mechanical process is getting your station tubes moving. It's clearing your ear, like they do when you're aeroplane. They say chew something, pop your ears, you know, get chewing. When you chew caraway seeds, you're actually breaking down the fibre to release the polyphenol compounds in the caraway seeds right next to your bloody ear at the same time as you're opening it up. So you're getting it absorbed into that area. It works really, really well. So naturally, prevention, eat what's in season, because again, in the change of the season, we get an abundance of amazing fruit. Surprisingly, the seeds, the peels, the skins, all of this stuff that's coming through on the change of seasons usually has compounds that you need in your local area to combat what's likely to hurt you in that local area. Nature's smart like that. So eat what's in season, eat what's local. Start loading up on the salads, start hooking into the garlics, the ginger, make sure there's no zinc deficiency, make sure there's no vitamin C deficiency, and surprisingly, make sure there's no magnesium deficiency. Magnesium is something I would never have talked about. I mean, I'm a bit biased because we just released a magnesium product and reading it, but that spun me out that I never thought of magnesium as providing an off switch for all of these reactions.
Yeah.
I always looked at nerve muscle, but I didn't think of inflammation, mucus, that sort of stuff. It's crazy, man.
Why not?
And the only other thing is avoid during acute infections. Like for prevention, that's when you use your ginsengs, you use your so prevention and recovery from convalescence. You never get to use those words in conversation normally. You read them for decades, you never get to use words like convalescence. So use ginsengs and astragalus for prevention and recovery, but during an acute infection, you don't want to be loading tonics into your bloodstream because they're going to tonify a virus before they tonify you, especially an envelope one living in your immune cells. And you don't want to be taking mega doses of sugar into your bloodstream because that's what the bugs feed on. So some people will go, man, I'm going to go juice like crazy.
Or bread and flat lemonade.
The flat. My mum used to make me sit there and stir the bubbles out of the lemonade and then drink it off the spoon to settle my tummy. And that creates osmotic diarrhea and feeds sugar into your bloodstream.
Well, that's right. And sugar immediately, if you're taking a lot of refined sugar, this is the thing. If you're sick, it amazes me to this day when people have got a cold or a flu. The first thing that they reach for is like, you know, milk or custard or, you know, mucus-causing compounds. Dairy.
That Anchorman. Milk was a bad idea.
Yeah, it surely
Milk was a bad choice.
And the other one is obviously the comfort foods. Oh, I'm just going to stay home, and then they pull out the box of chocolates, or then they go and get some sweets, or they go and get something with refined sugars, which is just absolutely destroying your immune system.
Yeah.
In terms of it suppresses it massively. I forget how much the sugar retards it.
You look up the old research, the old macrobiotic recipe books and that sort of stuff where they used like in Chinese medicines. See, all Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine, they're not medicine, they're foods.
Yeah.
So it's teas, soups, stews, and all that sort of stuff. So their actual medicine model is making food at home. So have a look at those sort of things, because in the Chinese they use the rice congis and that sort of stuff, where they'll use the old rice, which is making resistant starches and that sort of stuff. They'll boil it down, and it's just there basically to hold up all of the other compounds, which is usually a fair bit of like we're talking before, cayenne peppers, spices,
all the spicy
gingers,
stuff.
and that sort of stuff. So
I love it, my son. There's a couple of things. One, if you got a cold or a flu or a sickness, avoid sugar, specifically refined sugar.
Yeah.
Two, if you got a cold, please don't take dairy. The third
it's
one,
mucus forming.
The third one that my son does all the time, the poor bugger, is when you got ulcers, avoid chocolate like the plague, because the arginine there is just going to take them to the next level.
Man, do you know what I do for
Veggie?
ulcers?
Vegemite?
Vegemite.
Yeah.
Load them up Vegemite.
yeah.
So for our American listeners that don't like Vegemite, try to put it on a stinging ulcer.
Yeah.
And you really hate it.
Yeah.
And the
Or go get
Australians who don't like Vegemite.
Or
But
Marmite.
virus, they're a virus too, aren't they? Mouth ulcers are a little virus.
Yeah.
They're related to the cocksucking bee virus, aren't they?
The cocks. The what?
The cocksucking bee virus.
Coxsackie bee virus. Yeah.
Yeah,
We've got to be careful of the pronunciation with that one.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
It's got nothing to do with herpes, obviously, because also they're upset.
They're often associated with cocksucking too. You're right.
Yeah, but that's all cut. But in terms of
No, you can't. That's gold.
No.
That is
verifiable gold.
infectious humour. That is
Very
infectious
Hey, you like that?
Oh, jeez.
Boom. Actually, it's
no.
not bad. But in terms of just simple things like that you can do to actually support your recovery and reduce your pain.
Rest, drink fluids, hot lemon drinks. These are all good things too. Just chill out, get well. I reckon take some multi-food too. I reckon that's very important to get your nutrients up.
Make
while
sure.
you're sick.
Yeah, and the other thing, you don't want to overload the bug. You don't want to overload your body with mega doses of things, because the bugs will get it first. The bugs are floating around your bloodstream and in your gut, and you go
Active
load
cell.
up with nutrients. They love it. They feed on it. They're faster feeders than us. They're going to take it all and tonify. So throw in poisons. They'll take that in first.
Yeah.
And starve them. Because when they're starved, like if you starve the bugs, they're hungry, and they're more likely to suck in the poison.
Yeah.
Still going.
We finished
I can't
ages
believe you're
ago.
going to cut out my fucking jokes and you're speaking this shit.
Back streets back. All right.
Oh no. Backstreet's back. Oh, my nuts.
Oh no. God.
Oh, too far for Steve-O.
I
So we done?
think we're done.
Well, thanks, guys. That's it for this week, and we'll be back next week.
No, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
No, thanks.
We're out of here.
Creeping me out. You're creeping me out.
Chew. Marvellous.
Check. Maybe
Marvellous.
want to go 50 minutes?
Check out.
No, Max, no. Security, if Max Walker sets 10 foot within this door, shoot him.